And you are the Avatar.
Then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. He ran!
Which is why we have to kill them all.
Yes.
Yes!
There is only one way to resolve this. Agni Kai.
Compassion? Compassion is a sign of weakness.
If you ask anyone here, they'll tell you he may be a prince, but he's not our prince.
It was quiet, and then my mom died.
Look at the power you have. That's because of me.
That wasn't you. That was me.
It would have been wise to have focused on your training during your journey.
Nice job, Avatar.
Who do you think was my ally through all this?
I have a feeling you've been hurt more than enough.
Tonight, we will celebrate! We will praise the glory of the Fire Nation!
Hello and welcome to the From the Spirit World podcast, a legendary Avatar, The Last Airbender, and the Legend of Korra podcast for overlyanimated.com. We were podcasting episode by episode on the new Netflix live-action Avatar series with some of the biggest Avatar fans you know, the From the Spirit World crew. I am your host, Dylan, and today I'm joined by Mel.
Hello.
And Jeff.
Hey, hey.
And we might be joined by someone else as well as we go, but we are capping off our Season 1 live-action Avatar, The Last Airbender, Netflix's Avatar podcast series, which we previously did a podcast on all 8 episodes of that show. Can you believe that we did 8 podcasts on that? And so now we're back once again. We can't get enough, apparently, as we're going to talk the whole season, give our review of the whole Season 1, and we're going to get some early speculation in on Season 2, as the show has been renewed for Seasons 2 and 3. So a lot of people are starting to talk about what episodes are they going to do in Season 2. Talk about Toph and how that's going to work in the show. So we're going to start to speculate on those things at the second half of this podcast. Should be some fun stuff there. And to start it off, we will kind of recap all our thoughts and go over the best parts, the worst parts of the season, and see how we're feeling now, maybe a month later. So we are going to get into spoilers for all of Season 1 of Netflix's Avatar. And we'll be in full spoiler territory for the original Avatar and also Korra in this podcast. You can search From the Spirit World or Overly Animated anywhere to subscribe to either feed or the dedicated Netflix Avatar feed to see all of these podcasts and stay subscribed for any future Avatar podcasts coming up, especially that From the Spirit World feed. That might be a good place if you just want our Avatar and Korra podcasts. You can send us your questions and comments to podcast@overlyanimated.com. Send us feedback on how we did on this series, and still soliciting feedback for if you guys want to know if you guys would like to see a full Avatar rewatch from us coming up. That is an option, and I want to hear from more of you guys, though, before we get to it. So please leave a comment wherever you're listening if that's something you'd be interested in. Look, if you liked us talking about this show, imagine us talking about the original Avatar. Even better, I would assume. But we'll talk about that more at the end as well. Let's get into our Season 1 in review part of this podcast. 2 questions here, but let's start with this first one. What's your maybe 30-second, could be a little longer, not as many people on this one. So Mel, what's your kind of review of Season 1 of Netflix's Avatar?
My review of Season 1 is that it's fine. I do think it got better as it went along, but I don't know. I mean, something about the acting across the board never really sat great with me. I will say I do think overall the writing was not too terrible. Like, I think, they actually did a fairly good job incorporating pieces of the show, having arcs that made sense for the most part. And then, there was a few things that it's like, why, like Han's inclusion was like just bizarre, and a few other things that were threads that were clearly just there for the sake of being there. But I do think that I'm hopeful that Season 2 could be better, and something that actually is maybe a little bit better than fine. Remains to be seen. But I think those are my feelings.
Nice. Better than fine. That would be great. That would be
Yeah.
great. Jeff, what is your overall review of season 1?
Yeah, I think it's also fine. I think it had an opportunity to be its own thing, like live in the Avatar universe and maybe be inspired by the characters, but not even like it could try and be canon and be somewhere else in the timeline. It could be totally not canon and just like mix and do a mishmash. But I think it would have been more effective, like better to have the freedom to do whatever they want, whatever a live action medium calls for, versus being tied to the story beats of an animated show, and then bringing in random stuff for little reasons. I guess I don't see any rewatch value in it. I'm not gonna go rewatch it. And it's funny, Dylan, you in one of the episode reviews, you mentioned this TV show Michelle Yeoh is on, the brother's son, and
yes.
Offhandedly you said it was like an actually good show as a throwaway line. But I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I tried to find good things about this Avatar show, and there's like the good acting, in certain cases, good casting. What I mean, yeah, in certain cases, are good acting and casting. Costumes, the bending effects were decent.
The lighting was good.
I was not a fan of the lighting, actually.
I actually don't know if the lighting was good or not. That was just my water cooler toss out.
Yeah, that's me.
Cool. And the brother's son, which I mentioned, got canceled, and the show continues on. I think you could argue that this is an actually good show. I mean, I think it at least was not terrible, and that's kind of the starting point for where we're coming from with this show, because the expectations heading into another live action Avatar after we saw one terrible adaptation, the expectations were just so low. And, despite the many criticisms we're about to give and we have given in this podcast series, I think this show exceeded expectations. Would you guys agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean that's the benefit of coming in with low expectations. But I will say the big highlight, I've been trying to mention this throughout the show, but I think visually just is the big highlight for me. I never imagined that, and especially after the first attempt, but even in a live action show in the Avatar universe, it doesn't just have to be an adaptation of Avatar: Last Airbender, and a live action version of anything in Avatar universe could look this good across the board. Bending, I thought was really good. I mean, it's not going to look in some aspects, it won't look as good as animation, but kind of just depends where you're coming from. I think it held its own. The sets, the costumes, any sort of like fair, minor, or medium level criticisms aside, I thought overall the show looked good. And my big highlight was in the finale with the color effects that they did, which they replicated the animated season 1 finale. I thought they were spectacular. Definitely could be a little controversial in how weird they were, and how they went for it. They went full striking black and white with the color coming in. So I do think a lot, like Jeff said, no rewatch value. I think Is the season memorable? For me, I'm probably going to remember the visuals of the finale the most. Like it's something that really stood out and was striking. So I guess looking for positives, it does set itself apart. I feel like visually, and then everything else was at least competent. There's definitely some big complaints we're going to get into. Obviously, I mean, I guess I'll refrain from getting into kind of these two big high-level criticisms we've been kind of developing as we went through the season with the podcast. We'll kind of recap those and see how we feel about them now. But, Zuko was great. Zhao really came on at the end. Iroh also good. So there are some highlights here, even if overall I agree that this show was fine. I agree. So how about from this angle, as we continue to work our way through the season? It's been about a month since we kind of finished up the season. Has this aged well in your mind? Has it aged poorly? Have you thought about this show at all, Mel, in the past month?
And no, and proof of that is that I was like, oh crap, I have to watch the last episode before I do the season review.
Oh, you never got around to the last episode.
Yeah, I was fresh off of.
Well, give us your quick finale take, since you were the one person that's not on the finale.
The thing that I keep coming back to when I think about watching that episode, which was about 6 hours ago, is the bending training going to be taking place between seasons?
Yep.
Or is it just off screen?
Oh, yep. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think competent is the right word, is what you said, is like the sort of highest I'm willing to go with a lot of it. There's some of it I don't understand. Like, I know, Amashu gets conquered sometime before we head back there in season 2. But the idea that Ozai's like, let's launch a full-scale assault on this heavily fortified Northern Water Tribe city to distract them from taking this much smaller, not at all important city. That one also stuck with me as an interesting choice. But yeah. So to answer your initial questions, yeah, I haven't done a lot of thinking about it since the last time I was on one of the episodes, and I think that speaks to Jeff's point about there's not a ton of rewatch value in it, at least for me. But
nice. That is funny that you didn't get around to the last episode until just now, until forced to.
I wasn't going to tell you, but I feel like it was a good way to answer your question.
It does definitely answers my question. I will say before people comment, I don't know exactly if Omashu or Northern Water Tribe is bigger, but certainly Omashu did not seem to be strategically relevant in Avatar to a large extent, so it is a weird choice in that regard. It's not really like them taking Omashu ever particularly matters that much.
It's also interesting to me that the spirits predicted they were like, you got to get up north. He's going to attack the north. And it's like,
they couldn't predict Ozai's subterfuge, though.
Yeah, but
like it could have mattered strategically. They could have shown supply convoys going in and out, resupply, whatever, command and control of this whole region, but they didn't world build enough for that.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think original Avatar also did not world build in that regard that much. We didn't really ever see, correct me if I'm wrong, ever see them taking over Omashu. The effect of that, right. Other than I guess it gets them closer to once they take over Ba Sing Se, it leads to the ultimate season 3 finale. It's kind of, I feel like that's as much as we get though. Yeah,
and then but the original show also didn't suppose that we'll take Omashu at the expense of our entire navy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked, and we did talk about this on the season finale podcast. I agree. This is probably one of the stupidest things about the season, looking back, and it immediately seems like one of the stupidest things. So it's not even in retrospect. But I'll see if I remember anything else to follow up on there. But Jeff, how about you? Has this show aged well or poorly or neither?
It's faded from my mind. So, yeah. I don't know. I'm paging it back in, and I'm remembering the things that I remember are I liked the Zuko interactions, like how they fleshed that out. That was nice. I agree that the visuals, especially in the finale, were great. But other than that, it's aged neutrally, I'd say.
Neutrally. Yeah, I don't think there's anything in particular that's aged poorly. It's just, I do agree that the fact that it has not stood out at all and has just faded gives the impression of aging poorly. It's like nothing was good enough to really stand out too much. And look, I know there's fans that are a lot more positive about the show, so I'm going to get to that in a second. Like, I do think there are aspects that if Zuko's character and performance has been on your mind and you've been posting about that, or I don't even if you're not like a poster, even if you like, if you just think about the Zuko like from this show, like I think that is completely fair. He was at times fantastic, so I think that there are other perspectives on that. One thing I've remembered what I wanted to follow up with from Mel, and so we said we all kind of have not thought too much about this show. How about Avatar in general? You know, so many years later, Mel, does Avatar come up, original Avatar or Korra? Like, is it something on your mind typically in like a month for original Avatar is in my mind, but this show wasn't. Is that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, I own the Blu-rays of the original show. Like, you know, I think I haven't done a rewatch in a couple years, but like, you know, we talk about like, oh yeah, we should do a rewatch sometime soon and that sort of thing. And, you know, I feel like, you know, it comes up in other places too. Like I was watching another show that it was Supergirl on Netflix, and they like had a character who was like, oh, that dude's like earthbending, and they like mentioned that in the show. They were calling him the Earthbender because they were, you know, that was like a cultural reference the show could make. And it's like, I think that there's like, you know, it's very much in the sort of like media and cultural fabric of my mind, and the show will not be. And it's, you know, and it's not even something where it's like, you know, I know sometimes people look at this stuff and they say like, oh, like it's, you know, damaging the original because it's less. And it's like, I just think of it as a completely separate thing.
That's a good point to bring up too, since we are being a little negative on it. But I agree that, by the way, whenever shows have like some sort of elemental manipulation, it's like it's awkward if they don't reference Avatar at this point, and kind of has been like that for a while. Yeah, Jeff, I guess, do you typically think about Avatar? Also, in Mel's question, does this damage the reputation of Avatar? Are you able to separate it?
I'm absolutely able to separate it. I mean, I do think about Avatar more often, mainly because Instagram's algorithms have figured out that I like Avatar. So I've now started showing me things, and they're funny, and I like them, and it calls to mind the great animated show. I have not yet rewatched it. I think it would be fun to, and I will probably touch on that later in this episode of what that might look like. Original Avatar animation definitely is its own microcosm of goodness, and the Netflix show, I think, is like, if nothing else, brings in new audience to it potentially.
Yeah, new audience. You could argue, I feel like, even if you don't think the show is that great, that it in some ways enhances the overall Avatar kind of experience, just because there are certain things the show did do well. And for instance, if you rewatch original Avatar, like, it very much looks like it was from 20 years ago. Not that it doesn't look great, but the aspect ratio in particular, but also it's like it's an old show, and this show is a new, gorgeously animated. I mean, because it is partly animated and live action parts as well. So experience. So I think it's nice to have like a modern visual version of Avatar. In that regard, you could think about it like that. And like, you know, I think the Zuko Zhao performance, they're asked not to like trash on the other characters too much. There are aspects of the other characters that were well done. We'll talk about the good and the bad. But I feel like the Zuko performance only enhances Zuko overall. I'll still take animated Zuko over this Zuko. It's not like, I'm not going that wild about it. Not like he was better than original Zuko. The original Zuko is one of the best characters ever. But this Zuko's also great. So I think it overall enhances it. But really, honestly, the most important thing this show did, this is no disrespect to the show. I know a lot of people put a lot of hard work in this show, and I do want to give it its credit in all the aspects, but the most important thing the show did is not even about the show itself. It's that it brings Avatar back into our minds, into the cultural mainstream. Not that it ever really went away, and that's pretty wild that Avatar is still one of those 50 shows that's kind of ever present, I feel like, in our culture, which is, I don't think we would have expected that back in the day when we were talking about the original Avatar. But it's even more so when there's a modern version of it, So that's to me, and I love that because it makes me think about original Avatar more. This show, honestly, original Avatar, I'm not thinking that much about the episodes. It's more like the Avatar world could be on my mind, and more likely Korra, but more likely the Avatar world. Like, what are the possibilities in the Avatar world? We've done our time in the Ba Sing Se streets or whatever. Like, and I guess we'll be back into those streets with this show. But so when I say, like, I also I'm not really thought about this show much. To be fair, I've not thought too much about the specifics of original Avatar. It's just the overall Avatar world, which this show being here does enhance kind of the experience of still being able to live in that world to some extent. And
also,
yeah, go ahead.
As far as like being aware of the Avatar world, I did as a consequence of getting back in touch with this crowd, I now have been recommended to pick up the Avatar books, which are so far really good. So,
oh no, wow, Allie's work is paying off. There you go. Maybe I'll get into it. Maybe I doubt we will podcast on them, but if you really want to hear about Avatar book podcasts, you can let us know. I suspect those wouldn't be popular, but maybe you could comment and potentially change my mind. But yeah, there's still overall Avatar world material out there. So that is nice. Let's dive into some more specifics of, well, I guess we could stay high level of highlights. I do like asking this question in these season retrospectives, keeping it vague in case you don't have a favorite episode, but I do think that would be interesting if there's one episode that really stands out to you. Favorite scene, favorite parts of the show, not like getting into like Zuko overall, but like is there something that the show did so particularly well you want to highlight, Mel?
I mean, I do think they definitely captured like exactly what Zuko was in season 1. I don't know if exactly what that was translates, perfectly to screen. But I also just think, it's probably just me. I mean, like, to me, it's like, oh man, he's annoying, he's whiny, but it's like that's exactly what he was in the first season. So he's like, he's doing that right. So I think that was pretty good. I did like the weaving in of the Lu-Ten stuff and just deepening Zuko and Iroh's relationship a lot earlier in the show than in the original. And I think, overall the benefit of foresight that this, script has compared to the other shows is, it's fun, it's a benefit and it's fun to see, like understand like, oh yeah, they're like doing, they're referencing this, or that was something that was introduced in Korra that, they're implementing here world building wise and that sort of thing. So, I do think it makes for a more cohesive mythology and a more organized and like, better continuity in the world building and that sort of thing. That being said, there's some things I didn't love about the world building that they did, but I do think there's like hints of them like doing what I would want them to do when it comes to using the knowledge that they have of later seasons and later shows and implementing them in a way that doesn't feel too Easter eggy, but feels like, okay, yeah, this is a unified, there's like a vision for this world.
Yeah, I mean, they brought in the Fog of Lost Souls, they brought in the Kuruk material from the novels to some extent. So yeah, I think that's a great point that that's like what that's what an Avatar show now should do, and they probably should do it even more in season 2. I agree. Yeah, Mel, could you even name a favorite episode if you had to?
I'm gonna be honest with you, they all kind of blur together for me.
Apparently it was not the finale, or else you would have said that.
I mean, no, it wasn't the finale, or maybe it was. I don't know. They all like the middle of the season is kind of a mush together for me. I feel like maybe, I don't know, like maybe it's recency bias, but like maybe the episode before the finale, like I feel like I remember not hating that one.
Yeah.
But
the North. I was advocating
I
for
did
that
like
one.
the Kyoshi stuff, I will say.
Okay.
I thought that was pretty good.
Warriors.
Yeah.
Nice. Jeff, how about you? Favorite episodes or other favorite parts of the season?
I remember being most effusive about Spirited Away. That was the episode with Heibai and Ko.
Yes.
And mainly that came from, well, there's the visuals of those two creatures were very striking. I'm always one for a heart-rending scene, and seeing Sokka really get it was touching, in a sad way, because he had a very sad past, as a few of them did. I feel like I'm giving him too much credit. He had a bad experience with his dad, but it was still touching. But the scenes that come to my mind when I'm trying to think of memorable ones, kind of the bookends, right? So there's the Godzilla creature from the end, and also the very first scene of the entire show, basically, which was, well, okay, never mind. Not the first scene of the entire show, but the attack on the water of the air temple. I was invested. I was like audibly like, come on, no, you know. So it was a good intro to the series.
I will say, since I did with Koizilla, I do think I was into whatever it was they were trying to posit with, you know, they're like, oh, Aang doesn't exist anymore and that stuff, and it's, you know, and I was like, you know what, this is wild, but I'm willing to see what you do with this. Obviously it turned out to be not much of anything, but I think that was their way of sort of pushing the Avatar State stuff that'll be more prominent in the next season. But I didn't hate the idea there of like the just sort of like total self and personality sacrifice that comes with sort of merging with a spirit, I guess, which is something the show seems to have invented. But I thought it was an interesting bit of world building. That's
interesting interpretation, that it's kind of foreshadowing end of season 2 Avatar State type of stuff. Yeah, I like liking the idea, but certainly they couldn't even commit to it for like 5 seconds. It's rough. But it's one of many kind of weird small changes they made in the finale for not much reason. But look, I do think in terms of highlights of the season, I think it's original material to a large extent. And probably this is like me being biased just because like we know the actual stuff that happened in Avatar so well, so them remaking it is to some extent not that interesting. So when they do something new, it's just going to stand out more. So when I think of best parts, it's the original Iroh and Zuko flashbacks, mostly in episode 4 with Lu Ten, and then also there are some in 6, I believe. Maybe some others spread out, but they had a few original flashbacks that ranged from fine to actively good and some of the best scenes in the show. So that's really what I remember like most, or what it stands out to me as the best, alongside the kind of original Aang and Gyatso material from the first episode, which isn't as good as some of the Zuko Iroh flashbacks, but I liked seeing it, and it's still I said at the first podcast, it still stands out to me now as some of the stuff I liked seeing the best. So I think those are the best parts, is when they did kind of these original flashbacks, and I'd love to see them do more of them in season 2. And best episode, I mean, like Jeff said, 5's his favorite. Like I would say 5 was my least favorite, so that's funny. But honestly, all these episodes are somewhere between a 5 and a 7 out of 10. So it's hard to say what's like what is best, what is worst. I'd said the North at the time was my favorite episode 7, just because it was a good, straightforward kind of adaptation of episode 18 of Avatar. Masks, I think, is good. There's a lot of good and bad, but the highs are some of the highest of the series. So I guess the Zuko Aang talk, their version of it, I think is one of the highlights of the show for me. Also, the Zhao campiness ramps up in 6 and continues into the finale, where the Zhao campiness is I think incredible. And the other episode really highlighting is episode 3, Omashu, which their merging of different episodes worked the best for me there. That is something to note as another good aspect of the show, or at least interesting, is seeing how they would take various parts of the season and combine them into one. But honestly, I feel like it's more interesting than was necessarily good. But
Yeah,
I think Omashu was when it was probably a good example of it being resulting in some good storytelling.
I mean, like, I remember when they, like, announced all this casting, and they were like, they cast somebody for Jet, somebody for Teo, someone for the Mechanist, you know, someone for Boomy, someone for Suki, and, like, they were, like, hitting all these, like, major, you know, somebody for the fire temple, the head fire temple stage, and that sort of thing, and they were hitting all this stuff, and I was like, how are they going to do this all in, what was it, 8 episodes? And I think the Omashu one was, like, so close to being it's so close to having, it could have been a mess, and somehow it's, like, miraculous that it wasn't, and they pulled off that many threads at once. I will say by the end of it, that was my least favorite stretch of, and I think it's, like, one of the weaker, the original Omashu episode is one of the weaker episodes, you know, in the early parts of the show. Yeah, I don't know. It's just that one also stuck out to me for, like, the example of, like, you know, how much they can pull things in from across the season, and, you know, you recontextualize it a little bit, and, you know, it's functional. So
yeah, it's weird. It is interesting that it's not a mess. I agree. And it kind of comes together decently well, even if there are some quote-lage worthy lines from that episode. And I do want to note Into the Dark as well, the next episode, which Mel said the Boomy stuff is from that episode, but Into the Dark has those Luten flashbacks, which I think probably are the best part of the show. So that is in episode 4. On the other hand, it has the Boomy stuff, which is not that exciting. Also has my infuriating Cave of Two Lovers stuff. So that is really the most polarizing episode in my mind. High highs, low lows. But yeah, I think for the most part, their adaptation stuff, that is probably a good, we can touch on it now if there's anything else to say about it. Their kind of way of adapting and combining and taking stuff and moving it around, I think it worked 80% of the time, and like 20% of the failures is a large portion of the failures is Cave of Two Lovers in my mind. That being said, I'm biased. But I thought that was maybe the most prominent example of them pulling something in that didn't necessarily work that well. But the Jet and Mechanist stuff, Mechanist I think was overall fine. Jet actively good at times, bringing him into Omashu. And then there's June, who ultimately didn't do much, but it was cool to see her, I guess. They brought her in earlier into the season. I think those are probably the most prominent parts. They brought Ko in earlier. I don't know. Any other kind of these, like, moving thing around changes that stand out as good or bad?
The Yu Yen archers are the one that stand out most to me as being absolutely worst.
Yeah, generally in place in terms of the Blue Archer, but they brought them in earlier. Yeah, and what they did with them in Blue Space, they ultimately don't do that much with them, which feels like June to me, honestly. At least she has.
Oh my god, I forgot she was. You're right. They did June too.
At least she advanced the story by capturing Aang at some point, but her screen time was very small.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mel, any others to note?
No, I mean I think we hit the major ones.
Yeah. And then if they come, maybe they'll come up again in highlights or lowlights / worst parts. So let's get to that. So let's start to highlights as we try to ramp up on some of the more positive things to not lose people. We've been talking about Zuko. I do think Zuko comes out of this as the public's big winner from this show. I think as Avatar fans as well seem to like the Zuko performance. I like how Mel put it in terms of maybe not likable to some of us, but a great portrayal of what he was in season 1. Maybe even more comes across whinier and more unlikable at times than Avatar season 1, which I like. We're going to talk about worst parts, but they really did not want you to not like any of the other main characters, and they want you to like Zuko. So, but there's a lot riding on the charisma, I feel like, which is there, I think. So I do think Dallas Liu's performance of Zuko got to be one of the highlights we say here. I don't know. Is this to the extent where it's like I couldn't have even imagined a better live action Zuko?
I mean, yeah. I mean, because it's something I've not super thought about. So
What about Dev Patel's Zuko?
I mean, like Dev Patel's Zuko was Dev Patel. I feel like could have. I mean, like they made him be so serious and like. That is an aspect of Zuko's character, but there's
such talent in that movie, wasn't there? Dev Patel.
There was the cast, like the list of people who's in that movie.
Ranging from new director Dev Patel, who's widely critically acclaimed, to billionaire's daughter who played Katara, who is so
married into the Beckham family now. But yeah, like Dallas Liu, like like if you were to picture what Zuko would be like in live action, I think it's exactly what he put on screen. And it'll be interesting to see how he progresses through the story arc and seeing some of the more serious parts of the character that you get in these flashbacks and that sort of thing in the first season. It'll be interesting, and I think like no matter who it is, there is something about seeing the character at the actual like age they're supposed to be, as opposed to animation where it's like, okay, you hear these he's 16, he's 17, but it's like whatever. That means nothing watching in animation for the most part. But here it's like, you can really visualize, he's a 16-year-old kid and behaving like one. So I think, I'd agree. He probably was a highlight, or if not the highlight.
Makes you, talking about potential season 2 potential, it makes you excited for Zuko alone. If they really let him go at it, if we adapt, which we'll say, will they adapt that episode? We will get into it. I assume yes, but we'll get into it. Jeff, any Zuko thoughts, his performance otherwise?
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, I could imagine a better Zuko, hypothetically, but...
Is it just animated Zuko, though? Or is it an actual different live-action Zuko?
I mean... I guess what I mean is there were some parts of live action Zuko's dialogue which made me cringe a little bit. And I do not remember ever cringing from animated Zuko's dialogue.
Yeah. Do you think it was how he said them, or it was kind of the dialogue, the script at times?
I feel it probably was just the script.
But that's fair. Imagine a better live action Zuko, better script. I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, not a dig on the actor. I think the actor did an excellent job. Just the culmination, I guess. But yeah, I think other highlights for me, like, I think Sokka was quite decent. I actually did laugh at 1.5 of his jokes. So
that's the over if you were betting on before the season.
Yes.
And I should note, when we might make like these small script criticisms at times, I do overall agree that the show was well written overall. It's a very challenging thing to do to adapt it into this format. So when we make some certain criticisms, doesn't mean that there wasn't also good to the writing.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about Sokka. Yeah, it's a good before. Obviously, not necessarily people's number 2 highlight, but it is one of the more interesting ones. I was like, is Sokka a highlight of the show? I think for some people he is, and then maybe for others he was okay.
Yeah, I liked him. I mean, early in the show, he was kind of the thing that was like the big hit for me. Like the thing that felt like, they were obviously he's very different than his animated counterpart, but I thought Ian Owsley was doing a good job with his version of the character that sort of, embodied the essence of what Sokka's supposed to be. Early in the series, maybe like trying to go for a slightly more realist or grounded, approach to it, cutting back on the jokes and that sort of thing, which is kind of a bummer. But, again, seeing Zuko portrayed as close to his animated counterpart as he could be, and sometimes for me that didn't hit so much in live action. I feel like there is something to be said for finding the balance there, and I think with Sokka they did a pretty good job with it.
Yeah, I the performance was at least decent, if not good. I do think he carried a lot of those earlier seasons because Aang Katara's characters really took a while to come on. We'll talk about them in a little bit. But Sokka did hit more from the beginning, I agree. And I think a key is that I do think the scripts gave him a lot of material. Like, I think this was like a pretty meaty character in this version of Avatar. So, I think he always gets his little romance, which he did in the original show, but they really play into them. He does get, as much as there were very few comedic lines in this show, he does get the brunt of them, and there's some actually decent ones. He gets some nice character work. He gets even enhanced stuff from animated Avatar of his relationship with Katara. They even try even harder on that. So I think they put a lot of effort into Sokka. I don't know if this was intentional or if it's just kind of the result of where they ended up, but it really felt like they tried a lot with Sokka. He gets this whole thing with the Mechanist, and they go in this different direction with him potentially being more of an engineer or like an engineer oriented leader rather than a combat oriented leader is maybe a good way to put it. Which is a little bit of a different spin, at least early on with Sokka's character. So I really feel like they tried with him. I think it's shown through. Like, I do think, their efforts, paid off with Sokka, especially since some other things did not work as well early on and Sokka kind of kept the ship afloat. So yeah, I mean, I was one of the people who's biased against the character coming into the show. But I wouldn't say it necessarily won me over or didn't win me over, but like I respect this version of Sokka, the whole picture, not just the acting, the script, everything. I think the character worked out for sure. And I think I'm on board landing him on a highlight space. So that's nice. And as we're going through this, I am realizing all of the highlight characters are going to be men here.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
That's something, yeah.
Interesting. Maybe Toph can be the savior in season 2.
Maybe.
Let's keep the men going and talk about Iroh in relation to Zuko. Although, one of the most positively reviewed men in media. I feel like Iroh, one of everyone's favorite. Zuko too, but he does some bad stuff. And I like, we're seeing the discourse about Iroh again. It's like, actually, he was a terrible person earlier in his life. Okay, yeah, and that's what makes him an interesting character. So. Did the show get enough into that? I think there's the potential for more. Like, let's see Iroh do some things in the past, and then let's see him reflect on it now, which I think they did in, I think it was episode 4 with the Earthbending Guard. So I think that's their version of that.
Which, by the way, that guy playing the Earthbending Guard really, he stood out to me. That guy really was good in that scene.
Let's add him to the highlights. Yeah, we could say supporting performances that
I don't even know if that's supporting. He was like, I don't even know if he had a name, but
yeah. Did have a lot of lines though. But yeah, Mel, any thoughts on Iroh here?
I don't think I liked him as much as other people did. Just because, I don't know if it's vibes or whatnot. I mean, again, I'm like trying to go back into the mindset of like, what does season 1 of these characters look like? And, it's very different than season 3 and onward. So I might just be like projecting, you know, three seasons worth of, you know, understanding a character onto 8 episodes. But I think he was fine. I just, you know, I think I would like to see a little bit more, you know, I don't know if it's like a little bit more humor, you know, a little bit more whatever, going into season 2. But I think, yeah, I mean, like, for me, it was, I could take it or leave it.
I think you could certainly argue that he was hurt by the lack of humor in the show. Maybe the character that was hurt the most. I think Sokka too, but the show recovers with Sokka, and they replace the humor with other character stuff. Did they with Iroh? At least they gave new Luten material, so there's something new there. But yeah, I mean, certainly this is like a much less comedic version of Iroh. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I agree. Less comedic. He tried though. Like they had the whole like going for food things, mentioning tea. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what it was about the delivery or conveyance in the live action show that didn't quite cut it. He had less. I mean, you can do some more interesting things with expressions in an animated medium than you can in live action.
Yeah, I feel like his actor was very expressive. Yeah, I feel like if we had different people on here, Iroh would get a more glowing review, so I will note that. I think Iroh overall very well received. I am a little less high on Iroh as well, so we may have gotten the 3 lowest on Iroh people here. But I think it's the performance is good. There's some good material, especially with the Luten stuff. But I would argue that Iroh stands out for the most part in relation to Zuko in this show. You know, I don't really think there's anything on his own.
Yeah, that's to me what I think it was. What it was is that I can't separate him from his relationship to Zuko. And I feel like in the original show, you definitely can. Like, you know, he's Zuko's uncle and he's around him, but you know, he functions as his own character in a way that this iteration didn't fully feel like it did.
Yeah, I think so. It feels like he had more material on his own in that original Avatar. Maybe it's not season 1. I don't know. And to be fair, the show does have episode 4 with the earthbending cards, so there's some stuff. But yeah, I mean, it is like the dynamic with Zuko that I feel like they really nail. Paul Sun-Hyung Lee's actor. I think the flashbacks, all of just the interactions, even in the present, with Zuko, I do think really work. So I think that's like the most important part of Iroh's character is him being Zuko's uncle, and I think it is well done. I just think that I could use some more solo Iroh material. There's the chance for that, like the Toph scenes in season 2. That would be good. And then I don't know, maybe some more range from the performance. I think it's very easy to get like a very stereotypical Iroh portrayal, wise, sometimes snarky, compassionate. I mean, that is a lot of aspects, but you know, I do feel like there's more here for Paul Sun-Hyung Lee to dive into with Iroh as we go on. So I think he's a positive overall, but I think there's room for growth as we welcome Ben here to the podcast. Hello, Ben.
Hi, thank goodness.
Yes, you might be on the wrong mic if you want to look at that as we keep going. I'm not sure about that, but we'll come back to you in a second as we also start to bring in Zhao here as another potential highlight. Another one where I've heard mixed feelings on Zhao. I think me and Sam coming in super positive on Zhao at the end. The kind of arc with Zhao was we started from more of like a low level Zhao, more of a subdued, humbled to some extent, more of a strategic scheming Zhao, but we make the transition into the full campy Zhao that is in animated Avatar season 1 eventually. Whereas I think the original show also transitions, but it's from more of an intimidating warlord kind of place instead of the kind of scheming place. And I think for me, the campiness was at least one of the most entertaining parts of the last few episodes.
Yeah, I did enjoy, he did start pretty low, like subdued. The scheming or the campiness, it seems like the live action show, I don't know, did it eclipse the animated show in camp? Like, I'm trying to imagine animated Zhao saying something like "celebrate."
The delivery was even more over the top. Yeah, like I wonder if it's the script. I think the script is going for it, but Ken Leung's delivery far surpasses the animated campiness of the Zhao. Your mileage may vary on if that's good or bad. You know, I'm interested to hear other takes on Zhao. Mel, where does this version of Zhao end up for you?
Yeah, I mean, I liked him. I was into it. I mean, it's different, obviously, than as you said, between the sort of beefy militaristic warlord type versus like a scheming bureaucrat. But I was into it. I was into this version of it. And it's interesting to see that like they were doing, like, it does feel so like the version that they were going for in the live action movie. Like, this is what they had wanted to do with the character. And it was better. It was executed better here.
Yeah. Ben, do you want to start to bring in your thoughts, starting with Zhao here?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this portrayal was, fun. Starting in a different place than Zhao when we meet him in the original series, but ultimately getting to that, like, over the top, dare I say, campy Zhao. But I mean, it was entertaining, and actually I felt a fairly believable arc, kind of starting at this, like, regular position, and then just like he gets a little bit of power and he gets that craving for it, and then he just wants it more and more to where he descends into that madness. So
yeah, that's a good point. I do like that they're going for maybe a more realistic transition or natural transition from where they start to where they end up with Zhao. So I like the intent. I don't know if like what we saw enough from the transition was like, I don't know if that's the highlight for me. Like, I appreciate, at least it wasn't bad, at least it was like fine with it, but it's really just ultimately like I just feel like Ken Leung breathed life into the show towards the end for me. So I just will forever be grateful for him here. And I do think they should, we discussed this a little bit on the finale, I think they should bring him back. He should be alive at the end. That they should make that change. How can we get rid of him? Look, Azula is not going to hold down the fort, at least from what we saw in season 1. No disrespect, but I don't think she's bringing that campy energy. So I think we should keep it going. And I should note the script with Zhao, at times not great. One of my favorite campy moments from him with the finale, which is in the quote lodge, which is the I didn't listen to it before this, but I had an ally through all this. That speech to Zuko before he dies. It's like badly written. Like I think, I don't know. Like, I think they're kind of going for bad. I made this point in the finale podcast too. I think they're kind of going for badly written in a campy way. I think it's actually just not well written. But Ken Leung just sells the heck out of it, and like it could have gone so south. I feel like with everything with the Azula partnership. So I don't know. It works, but it's in a funny way. That is the comedic highlight of the season. is what we got with Zhao. We took away Iroh and Sokka's humor, and we gave it to Zhao to some extent, if not intentional. Before we move on, Ben, I am interested. We were talking about Iroh, and the three of us were a little lower on him compared to, it seems like, the general populace. Maybe we liked him in relation to Zuko. Maybe thought he could have had more of his own material. What's your review of Iroh from the season?
I liked. I'm sorry for forgetting the actor's name. I really liked him in the role. I just hope that he gets a little more meat to the role for season 2 on. So
Yeah,
but
I think fair.
I think he portrays the characteristics of Iroh well, the mannerisms. Just like I said, hopefully he gets a little bit more to work with.
Yeah, definitely fair. But I agree. I think he's, and I do think Iroh's another character that could be tough to do in live action. Very quote unquote cartoony character at times. So I think for what they did, it worked well enough. So that we've listed them as those as highlights: Zuko, Iroh, Zhao, Sokka, the visuals, which we talked about in the beginning. Any other big highlight characters or aspects to note from any of the three of you?
I mean, we already mentioned that soldier.
Yeah,
that one soldier?
He killed it.
Was there a favorite supporting performance? How about that? I know some people like Suki's mom. People like June. I do like June's performance, even if her character was not didn't have a lot to do.
I like Danny Pudi as the mechanist.
Yeah, nice. I do think he was good, and Jet as well. Honestly, I thought his actor was very, very good in that role. One of I don't know, like better than I could have imagined as a live action Jet. Sebastian Amoruso as Jet. Yeah. Any others from anyone?
I'm trying to see if they list this dude's name.
The soldier.
Yeah.
How about Lieutenant G?
He was fine.
Oh, he was. Yeah. I hope we see him again in season 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not seeing him. Well, they're a great little classic moment from the guy who voiced the Cabbage Merchant.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Cabbage Merchant. Okay. Look, I said my piece on the Cabbage Merchant, but yeah, it's I think a highlight for the fans for sure. So we'll say that. And look, it's the original guy, so you gotta give him his credit. Let's start to move a little faster here as we talk about how about the who I listed as good or bad. I'm not quite sure where we come down on these three characters. I want to start with Aang, actually. Now, I think a lot of people might say bad to some extent, but I'm not sure anyone's saying Aang was a disaster.
He wasn't a disaster. He did annoy the crap out of me.
What was annoying about him?
I mean, it's always tough, I think, with child actors to begin with. And it's like, I think for a lot of the things that I found annoying, other people might, say like, these are the things I liked about the portrayal. And I think that would be fair. But, the earnestness to it was just, it felt very forced, he felt like he compared to like these all of them were to some extent child actors, right? They're teenagers and that sort of thing, but he was the one who felt most like I was watching like his age. One thing that sticks out to me, and this is probably because again I watched the episode 5 hours ago, but when he's sort of surveying the damage of the siege towards the end of the episode, Legends, the finale, they give him that single tear, and then he's got just such this like I am crying now face on that. It was just a little bit of a bummer, and it's like I don't he's a kid. I don't know if it's his first acting role, but I think that's to be expected to a certain extent. But I think because the character is so in these early episodes in the original show too is so rooted in like earnestness and joy and just having this like very different personality than the world he's inhabiting. It just made for it made for something that could very easily become irritating in live action if done a certain way. So
I think it's a good point that the animated Aang, probably a pretty tough thing to portray, especially in a more serious show. So I think and the youngest of the kid actors, I think the deck stacked against him. I do think he brought joy appropriately throughout some of the early parts, especially much needed joy. But I certainly felt that his actor struggled with some of the more serious work, and more just like weighty work, But I did start during the podcast start to praise him in episode 6. Like, I think he held his own to some extent against Zuko in the Blue Spirit stuff. So I feel like that was the most important Aang work of the season, and I think that was his best performance stuff. So, like, was it like incredible or anything? It's like he's a kid, so it's not going to be as good as some of these other actors. But I think he came through in there, and then in the last 3 episodes, at times there's some of it, but I think overall, his performance felt better for me in the last 3 episodes. So, which I think elevated the show. If you're going to argue that the last 3 episodes were the best episodes or something, I think that's probably a big reason why. So I think there's some positives there and some maybe hope for the future with this Aang. Jeff, any thoughts on Aang here?
Agreed. It's a challenge as a child actor to measure up to an animated character, and so this isn't like a knock on the actor, right? But I guess it's kind of hard to back to my earlier point of they could have avoided all of this and just aged up all the characters and made them new and not that age, and then they get better actors and a different story, and they go. But they decided to, nope, we're going to stick to the story we have and as the ages. So,
yeah, we were talking about this towards the end, but they're going to be aged up anyway in season 2, which we'll get to. Why not just start there? Could have been more interesting. Could have avoided this weird avoidance of Aang and Katara, and maybe some other things that they're doing. Could have just aged them up to start with. I agree. But yeah, Ben, if you're back, any Aang thoughts from you?
Mixed feelings on Aang. I think the actor is doing, a good job as a young actor. I think his issue is a lot of the same as with like Iroh. I think he hopefully will get some better material with seasons 2 and 3. So
yeah. And definitely some weighty Aang material with the you lost Appa gone type of stuff and Ba Sing Se. So there's a lot there, I think. I'm hopeful for Gordon Cormier as Aang. And I think there's some highlights with Blue Spirit and others. So I don't know. I don't think the Aang performance weighed the show down, and it's not just the performance; it's also the material. Like Aang suffers when this is like a deadly serious show. So I think there's that. Let's talk about Azula. I know our thoughts on Azula are colored by the way they go with her at the end, taking over Amashu. But she did do something at the end, and I was complaining throughout the whole show that she was just sitting in the Fire Nation not doing anything. I did see a comment response but this is what Azula actually was doing in season 1 off screen, which I think is fair. I think this is like probably a pretty good portrayal. I mean, they added in more of the like Ozai playing them against each other, but this is probably somewhat of an accurate portrayal of what Azula was up to during season 1. I guess my question is, was it interesting, and should we have shown it?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that, like, little confession bit that Zhao has, where he's like, I had an ally, and, all that stuff that we were just talking about, and, like, thinking about, like, okay, who's that for? Because Zuko has no idea all this stuff that's going on, that Azula's, doing anything in the Fire Nation, that her and Ozai are having, like, a little bit of a tiff. It feels like that revelation, based on what they've set up, is supposed to be for Azula, who thinks that Ozai is, turning on her and playing favorites now with Zuko and stuff. So it just, I guess it was for the audience, maybe. But,
Yeah, and I think we talked about a little bit how it was for Zuko and, like, taking a shot at Zuko and for his character and his relationship with Azula moving forward.
Which I guess, but, like, then it's like, okay, why were we watching Azula do nothing for, for 7 episodes because, you know, again, like the conflict there was between her and Ozai. And I mean, I guess it got resolved off screen. And, you know, they went about their business. And, you know, I keep thinking back to that first intro scene that we get of Azula in season 2, where she, like, you know, threatens to throw the captain off the boat if he doesn't, you know, dock the ship and stuff. And you know, it was like, that was such a, you know, powerful bit of like instant storytelling and instantly setting up this character. And this version of Azula just does not feel like, you know, remotely close to that character.
Yeah, and maybe she has to grow into it, but I do think that season 2 premiere in animated Avatar, that is such an iconic intro to Azula, way more interesting than anything she did in this season in the show, which isn't surprising because I think that's an amazing scene. I do think people did like her intro scene in this show when she kind of infiltrated the rebellion and sold them out at the end. So I think there was some praise for that. That might have ended up being her most interesting scene. Ben or Jeff, are you guys anyone higher on Azula than we're kind of at?
I'm not.
Rip.
I agree. I mean, I think showing the extra stuff with her was a good idea in theory, but probably one of the least well executed elements of this season.
Yeah, go ahead.
It seemed like she was in the animated series. She's much more in control. She has her own agenda. She doesn't like her brother. She wants to go after him. In the live action show, she is much more beholden to her dad's opinion ever. It seems like that's more of her motivation, which seems a bit less sinister.
Yeah, could be interesting looking back on the entire series and how this show did Azula. This could be an interesting starting point. You know, like I guess like looking at it from the longer term, like it could only be a good thing setting up her character early. So we could see how it pays off. Yeah, I think other people did like the family intrigue more than maybe we did. And I don't know. How about where she ends up with taking over Amashu? I don't hate the idea. I think just it's hard to get past the execution of it feeling weird is a generous way to say it, I guess, at the ends of the finale.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, it's interesting to me that they had her end up there, because it's like, okay, you already did Cave of Two Lovers. I mean, I guess, like, they still want to do, like, the liberation of Amashu or whatever, but it felt like I can't really remember what other logistical reasons we would need to go back, since we did so much in Amashu already and incorporated some of Amashu's second season stuff into this. But you know, I don't know. I liked her costume in that particular. I liked her flowing cape and her helmet and stuff.
Yeah, nice. It could be that we don't go back to Amashu. I think that's one of the ones we could do from early in season 2. But it could just be that this was something that in the story of Avatar, Amashu goes to the Fire Nation, and so this is a moment for Azula to do it here, and that's how we're going to do it in this show. And I think it feels abrupt. Like when you think about it, not too long after this, she does capture Ba Sing Se, so it's not like it's out of character, I guess, but it does feel abrupt to me from where she was at for most of the season. But I do like that we did something with her at the end, I guess.
I mean, the only reason they're gonna have to go back to Amashu at this point is because Aang's gonna need an earthbending master. You know, so that's why they went back in the original series. So they may not have heard about Amashu being captured.
Yes. So practically we could do the same thing, or we could just start the season with Toph, but we'll get to it. Like there's a lot of ways you could do it. Let's go more rapid fire as we're trying to get to the season 2 speculation. I like that we are diving in depth, but rapid fire. Ozai, we saw more of him.
Yeah, I was into it.
He was great.
Yeah, I like Daniel Day Kim in that role.
Agreed.
I think Daniel Day Kim was fun. I didn't think the character, similar to Azula. I don't know if we gained too much by seeing him early, but it establishes his presence more. So that's fine. Yeah. Looking forward to more Daniel Day Kim. Getting into more low lights, because we were disappointed by Katara. I will say I did praise her in episode 7. I thought that was her best episode by far. And the finale, I think she's also pretty okay, but Katara's character definitely does not get a lot. Definitely a more subdued version of Katara for the most part in the show. I think we talked about it a lot throughout the series. Gawandio's performance, I thought it's not really her fault, but I do think she brought it in episode 7. I wish that she would get to show more emotion, but that's also true of the entire show.
Yeah, agreed pretty much. I think 7 and 8 got close. So maybe they'll let her actually show emotion in season 2.
Do we think the show will bring on kind of mom Katara or fiery Katara, which I guess we got a little bit of at the end, but it's still just like a very stone-faced fiery, not as much of like a expressive fiery, I guess is a way to put it. Do we think as she grows older now, we'll get into more of that, or is this just the version of Katara that we're getting?
It could go either way. I don't feel like they've written themselves into a corner with this. They could totally mix things up.
Well, and Toph will play a decent foil to Katara, because that's kind of how it happened in the original series.
That is true. We're bringing on one of our biggest instigators for fiery Katara here, so I think there is hope. And if we're skipping a few years, you can really do anything. But I respect them trying to do their own thing with Katara, but I do think we need more here, whether it's what the original show did or a different direction. So we will see. Let's get into. I don't need to rehash the spirit world unless anyone has any dire need to. You can jump in at some point. I want to kind of close things out before we get into. We also have to talk about the fact that Aang didn't waterbend again because it's worth talking about. But quickly rehashing these overall 2 high level kind of criticisms about the show. I want to see how you guys feel now looking back, or overall how you feel if you agree. Number 1, we're kind of developing this theory of unchallenging storytelling, them trying to be unchallenging to the audience. And the reason I say that is because it felt like they made a lot of decisions throughout the way that I don't think this was like the intent, but it gives the impression, the decisions they made, of not wanting to challenge the audience, even in small ways, such as Sokka not being allowed to be sexist. It's like we have to like Sokka, so we can't show him being sexist. Aang at the beginning does not run away. It's like we have to like Aang, so he can't take this unlikable decision. Especially baffling considering we grapple with him running away, despite the fact that he didn't run away later. Arguably some of the most baffling stuff from the season. I believe there are other aspects of this as well. We did make a counterpoint earlier that maybe Zuko is allowed to go in a more unlikable direction, so that's nice at least. But it just feels like very like rosy rose-colored glasses, whatever, like version of Avatar, which did feel like it allowed its characters to have flaws more. It doesn't feel like we wanted to be invested in characters with these like unlikable type of flaws.
Yeah.
Is there a risk? I'm trying to put myself in their head, right? Like, is it possibly they're worried about, getting got after for having
Probably.
Like,
I feel like that's the, and who knows, like maybe it's, a higher thing, whatever. But my first inclination would be they're worried about, online reactions to certain elements, which I think are very, even if you included them as they were, are very tame. So I don't understand what that's about. But the fact that they spoke specifically on the Sokka stuff and said that they were like, oh yeah, we didn't want this, we felt it was dated, and talked about their reasons for not adding it, or making the conscious decision to take it out, made me feel like it was like coming from a trying to appeal to the most amount of people.
Yeah, I think that is where they're coming from with this. It's another way of saying it, is they're trying to make a show that appeals to the most amount of people, but it's like too transparent in that. Like, it's funny because original Avatar is such a wide appeal show. Like literally almost any person on the planet can like animated Avatar, and it's like kind of made that way on purpose. But it feels like this show is trying really hard to be that, whereas animated Avatar felt natural, felt like they didn't have to try too hard to get to have that effect.
So if they were to create an animated Avatar show today, would they do? I mean, whoever, right? Could we expect them to make a similar call, or is there something inherent to the live action medium?
Yeah, I think it's the live action medium in the Netflix drama form, in the streaming show drama format. We've talked about this a little bit on the series. I think it's just they're just trying to make this type of show, which is very easy binge watching. Very like why anyone can like it. Anyone, it's like, and really it's true, and it's true. They did succeed. Like, this is a very wide ranging show. It's just at the cost of some interesting storytelling. And it is possible to have this like very wide ranging appeal show without sacrificing a lot of interesting material. Look no further than the show you're adapting here for that inspiration. So in terms of animated Avatar, like, I don't think there's anything inherent with today's time. I don't think their motivations are so much so that it's like we don't want to cause online outrage. I think with the Sokka stuff specifically, probably, so that's a factor. But, and I mean, they spoke to that. But I can't imagine Mike and Brian are going to care too much about with Avatar Studio stuff, And I don't think there's anything inherent with. I don't think it's 2024 shows are this way because of being scared of reaction. I think this is the direction these types of streaming shows have gone. Maybe that's a factor, but I think it's just an overall media company trend, capitalist profit driven, trying to like make these like wide ranging shows as there's a lot more pressure to drive profits. Anyway, any other examples of this or other comments on this kind of category? I do think we talked a lot about it during the series.
Well, I don't know if it's related to this, but have we speculated on like what might have been the thing that had Mike and Brian step away? Like, could it have been this?
I speculated on this once during the series, and I said I think it was this. I think it was. If I had to guess, Netflix wanted them to conform to their format of hour-long streaming drama in this aspect, which doesn't sound so bad on its own. It's like, oh, hour-long drama is the prestige TV format, but maybe they wanted to make more of a prestige show, and Netflix wanted them to make more of a show for everyone, and they were not interested in that. This is giving a lot of credit to Mike and Brian. Who knows? They might have been, they didn't want to work such long hours, or they wanted more money or something. But if it's like a creative decision, I mean, this jumps out as like the big creative reason to not want to work on this show to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I suspect they would say this if they were allowed to talk about it freely. Even if there are other factors, I feel like they would give this reason. I don't know.
Like, the other option in my mind would be like how rigid they have to adhere to the original storyline, but like I don't know.
That's a good point too. Yeah, maybe they wanted to do more different things, and Netflix just wants the same show because that's kind of the way to guarantee money. So,
yeah. Although I think it's probably more what you were thinking, just because those conversations about what kind of show they're going to make probably would have happened before they ever announced that they're even attached to it. So when the execs get involved and start talking about, okay, let's actually storyboard this thing, and it comes out to like appeal to everyone, that would make sense when they would.
Yeah, maybe it's more of a specific thing, like they wanted to age up the characters, or they wanted to do this differently, or they didn't. Yeah, so that would be really interesting if they were ever able to openly talk about it, which they probably won't. But that would be really interesting. How about the second bucket of things we've criticized, which is not a lot of quiet character moments, which in my opinion results in kind of the mediocre to some extent characterization that we saw from this show. We talked a lot about no camp life scenes, travel scenes, campfire scenes, basically not. There's a few probably. None of that. No real bending training. I mean, there's Aang encouraging Katara as she's learning a few times. Those were nice, but no bending training scenes, no camp scenes. That's like, it feels like half of the original Avatar show.
And that, like, that manifests itself even when, like, we have that great scene with Aang and Zuko in Masks, where he's talking about how much he's read Zuko's, journal. Well, we didn't get to see any of that because we didn't have any of those quiet moments.
Yeah, that's a good point. Referenced off-screen moments. And I think as a part of this, not much humor. I think that's a part of this too. Not much romance outside of Sokka. And like, sure, you taking away Katang is the romance, but not even, like, I don't know, just a random thing like Aang with the girls in Kyoshi or something. Like, we don't even we don't have like no fortune teller. I mean, those moments like breathe life into season 1, I feel like. So I feel like it results in just not as much of an emotional connection to these characters directly from this reason.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, any thoughts on this? Anything you particularly missed?
I mean, yeah, I think that these are important moments that were crucial to the original show. So maybe the next season will afford them some opportunity to slow it down, depending on how they want to write it. So
yeah,
but I just hope they take that time, So
yeah. And maybe let's keep that in mind as we map out season 2. Try to find time for this. Mel, any other thoughts on that or other high-level criticisms or other comments?
No, I mostly agree. I do think the lack of quiet character moments, is part of the thing that was hurting Katara's character as well. Because I think definitely, her character benefited from a lot of those camp life scenes and those sort of just conversations that they were allowed to have when there was more time on screen. But yeah, I mean, now that they're hopefully not rushing to establish these characters and get us to like them, they'll have more time to do other things with them in season 2, but we shall see.
Yes, we shall see. Okay, last thing, as we've been trying to get to season 2, but to recap, how was it? How weird was it not to have these? Aang waterbending literally ends the show saying, "Okay, it's time to learn this season. Okay, it's time to learn waterbending." As we look to season 2, we can start to bring this in. So they haven't filmed it yet, so the actors are already like 2 to 3 years older. So they're gonna have to age the characters up, probably also 2 to 3 years at least. So something to think about, though, is that if we're skipping at least 2 years, Aang had to have been waterbending in those 2 years, as they talk about it at the end of the season. So could we just start season 2 and Aang is already somewhat really skilled waterbender off screen?
That was my assumption of what they were going to do.
Yeah.
But like, why?
Unclear.
Why not show him learning waterbending?
Unless they open up with him maybe taking a kind of final exam a la Korra.
I mean, the only thing I can think is like earthbending was so tough for him, so that's the one they want to show, in actual scene. And for whatever reason, they didn't want to bog down the first season with scenes of him training, and they just want to, and like, whatever, I get it. I mean, like, he learns waterbending fairly quickly. That's like a point at one point where Katara is kind of jealous of him for that, and it's never really difficult for him, but earthbending and firebending are. So I can see them, with limited screen time, not wanting to, put that to screen and instead save the training scenes for the more character driven elements that happen with earthbending and firebending.
It is a good point that probably the most interesting element to see Aang learn would be earthbending, which we could see coming up. So that is fair. I'd be fascinated to know if in the writer's room they intentionally did this at a high level, or it just ended up this way, that he never learned waterbending. Like, God, was this an intentional decision? And it's like, okay, you guys want them to change things. This is something they changed. But it's like a negative change because it results in that factor that I just talked about of them taking out the quiet moments. So this is like a direct result of them losing that, but it's probably more of a high level decision to not have those type of moments and focus on the drama and the action, which ends up not leaving time for this.
So what should they have removed from season 1 to make time for those? I mean, I have thoughts. I mean, like, get rid of the whole Azula thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what else.
Fair.
That they could have not adapted a few more episodes.
You know, I think it's less like the trajectory of the season, honestly, high level. I think they did a pretty good job of, like we talked about with them taking stuff from various episodes. I think what they did with, okay, we're going to bring more stuff into Amashu, we're going to do a whole Spirit episode and bring more stuff there, and then kind of combine it with the Blue Spirit stuff, although it's pretty silly how they just run back to there at the end and don't even really attempt to resolve any of the Spirit stuff at the end of Masks. So that wasn't necessarily done that well. And then spend the last two, like the outline, I think, of the season is fine. I'm not saying change that. I think it's more just like, just make time for some quiet moments, maybe cut out this little action scene or this, I don't know, like find time in every episode rather than have this like a new arc or something.
So I brought this up when we were talking about the finale, but I think there still is some weight to the theory about they adapted the deserter storyline where Aang became scared of firebending, but they took that and potentially, this is the potential idea I think they were going for, taking that and morphing to he was scared to learn more bending in general because when training in airbending, he almost knocked his fellow students or his classmates off the mountain.
Yeah, they did. That's a good point. They turned it into this Aang plot line of him. He's afraid of his own power.
But the problem is, it's a good idea in theory, but they didn't dwell enough on it, I think, that it really worked.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I'm open to that. I mean, it probably would have been a little annoying. It's like, oh, Aang won't waterbend because but at least it's something. At least like there's some substance there if they hit on that note more. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Ben. I agree. So that's something they could follow up on. Now that Aang's proficient in waterbending starting season 2, is he too good? What's gonna, is he afraid of hurting people?
I guess you mean in show. I was thinking fan response of like, no, the male characters are never too good at anything. But
Gary Stu, in waterbending. I mean, which he is, I guess.
Yeah, which was partly it was on purpose. That was like
it's like an intention. It's like a valid intentional thing to do with Aang's character,
yeah.
And then he struggles with different elements. I think it's, but instead of going in that direction or a different direction, we didn't really go in any direction. Although, yeah, there's something there with the, like Ben mentioned. So I think it'll be interesting to see how we incorporate this into season 2. We can continue to speculate. Other quick hits of things they didn't do. Zuko saying honor. We talked about it a few times, but
about glory these days.
Glory. That's the new hotness, I guess. This is bizarre. I don't know. This is probably a direct result of them trying to be too serious or trying to be very dramatic. Can't do the honor meme. I don't know if there's much to discuss. Just I think it is worth noting. I would not have put this in my top 100 things that I would have expected from the show, them taking out honor. No Katang until dropping hints at the end in 7 and 8.
I think it makes sense for the age thing where it is now.
Yep.
I guess the counterpoint is that those are the ages of the characters in the animation.
They are, but like that's different in live action than in animation.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like you'd get the same kind of thing where with Anakin in episode 1.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, look, really, go ahead, Ben.
Sorry, really quick. I'm curious if with season 1, he talked about glory, but it wouldn't have just been glory for himself. It would have been glory for, his crew. So now that what I assume in season 2 will be him and Iroh alone, and then eventually him, if we might see that glory kind of shift to, I want my honor back. I want the honor of being recognized as the Fire Lord's son to take my rightful place.
There's hope yet for honor. I like it. Ben really bringing these optimistic takes moving forward. I like this. Maybe we'll see honor. I think they should introduce that. Like, make it a plot point of like, this is the transition into Zuko saying honor. It's like a big character moment. Like, sure. What does Katang? I mean, we talked about it. Like, to recap, I'm open. I think it's a reasonable idea to not do it because it is weird with the like 12-year-old actor and the like 14-year-old actor. Like, it is weird to do romance. I'm open to them delaying it. The issue is we lacked the character moments, the heart of the show, and so like we didn't replace it with anything equivalent, you know. And most infuriatingly, we adapted Cave of Two Lovers without doing Katang yet in the show. So I will say they better find an original replacement for Cave of Two Lovers in season 2 now that they did it already. If you want to please me, if they care. So
not to be Mr. Optimistic still, but again, another thing brought up before. I'm hopeful that with them filming the 2 seasons, not necessarily back to back, but in quick succession, that they're saving money. And if they save money, they might be like, oh, can we have like another episode or 2 per season? Sure, go ahead.
It's a good point as we start to get into the season 2 speculation. It will be interesting to see the episode count. You're right. They probably are saving money with the back-to-back shoots. So, and the show is very popular. We started getting some numbers in between now and then, and very popular show. One of Netflix's all-time most popular. So maybe we'll get more episodes. That would be interesting. But the last thing on Katang, I will say I did like what they did with them in episodes 7 and 8. So I think we're heading in the right direction. It is time to get to it once we do the time skip, I think. And let's start to talk about season 2. How about this? Will we see flashbacks to the time we missed in between seasons 1 and 2?
I doubt it. I mean, maybe, but I guess it depends on how far forward they want to go.
Could be interesting. Anyway, before Jeff, to jump back, what do you want to get into?
Before we leave season 1 and related to Katang, I do have a bit of hidden Zutara.
Is it time?
Yes.
Entire season 1. Yes. So, if you take the episode titles of all the episodes.
Oh, I'm excited. Okay.
You get Aang, Warriors, Omashu, Into the Dark, Spirited Away, Masks, The North, and Legends. Then you take the first letters of all of those words.
Yes. What does it spell?
We're getting visual aids. Other people who are listening we're going to have to figure this out on their own.
Yes. You get a poem. A waterbender oriental, in the dream sweltering, ardently manifests the night lovers.
Did you write a little poem?
Oh my goodness. I'm like mapping it out to the titles. I'm like sweltering art. Okay, manifests. Oh wow, it's a secret hidden Zutara message poem. Wow.
I'm getting teary-eyed reading this.
The night lovers. Is that how we talk about Zutara? Like they do have the night fight, and then you rise with the sun, which they didn't do in the finale.
I know that was such a bummer.
Well, they did go on their adventure. They went and they were ninjas. So in season 3,
upcoming,
I could see Zutara fans calling them the night lovers. Wow. I think you're onto something, Jeff. I think this cracked the code for. Actually, we're doing the time skip, and we're doing a different romance after the time skip. Mel, go ahead, Jeff.
No, that yes, very good.
Just, I guess, speaking of Mel, did you have any hidden Zutara from the finale?
You know, I didn't, because they took out the best parts of their fight and stuff, and also there wasn't that whole, when they go to find Zuko and him in the cave, and she's like, it's not gonna be much of a rematch, and she just kicks his ass.
None of that.
Yeah, bummer. So I guess maybe they're trying to throw us off the scent, and we'll all be surprised when come season 2 we find out that actually during the time skip they got together and it's a whole thing now. I don't know if you can hear this dog barking, by the way.
That's the Zutara dog.
Well, there was the bit of hidden Zutara in the finale, so.
Yes, what was it?
It was, Katara was lying on the ground. Zuko goes in for the finishing blow, and he just hesitates for a solitary moment because he's captivated by her beauty.
Clearly, I think so. Wow, we figured out what they're building towards. What's happening? Okay, so we'll be on the lookout for more hidden Zutara in season 2. Okay, I mean, look, there are a lot of good potential hidden Zutaras in actual season 2, but that's not what we're going to speculate on. So, yeah, I talked about flashbacks. I think that could be interesting if that's a way to show Aang learning waterbending, even if he's very proficient by the time we're back. It's a time that, like, we might have missed a lot of Katang moments if we're going to quickly get into that. So it's a way to maybe build some stuff up there. I feel like they succeeded a lot with flashbacks this season in terms of original flashbacks. So why not bring in some more original ones if we're doing a different story here? And yeah, season 2, like, if they're all at least, Aang will be at least 15, probably will be exactly 15, I would assume. So this is a different show. Like, this is like the biggest change that they've made so far. So this is, I think, I don't know, like, how will this come into play?
I mean, I guess it depends on how much they want to stick to their "this is a show for everyone" thing versus being willing to go a little deeper on some things and go a little more complicated, because I feel like, obviously the original show was complicated and had tough topics. I mean, it's not to say that, like, maturity is the only thing that can breed complex topics, but from their standpoint, it feels like it's a sort of natural pathway to it, if they want it to be.
Yeah. More mature, older characters, mature storylines. I think there's some potential here. So I don't know. The characters will be older. Toph will be older when we introduce her. We'll come back to that. Let's talk about Toph first, but then we'll map out the season. I think this is what people have been waiting for. So, right, when we introduce Toph, she's probably like 15 instead of 12. So that's going to affect things here. So I guess overall, like, let's do an around the horn on this, because it's the big thing. So Toph, how much are you looking forward to Toph? How do you think the show's going to handle her? I don't know. Anything else jumping to mind? Jeff, how about Toph coming up?
I'm nervous just because I think she was so cool in the animated show, and it'd be easy to not live up to that. Did I feel like there was some rumor that they were going to make her not blind, or is that real?
That was, I think, people being worried that they were going to do that jokingly, but also maybe a little bit after just some of the stuff that was coming out about the changes.
Okay, but it was basically rumor.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because that's kind of like her.
I do think they're going to take away all her blind jokes and humor.
That's the biggest question for sure. Yeah, is that the top of your mind, Mel, with Toph?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the type of thing that they're going to do. So yeah, I mean, for me, would be excited, but am mostly nervous and expecting the worst, I guess.
Ben, how about you?
I really don't want to just be the eternal optimist, but I mean, I am excited for Toph, and I don't know. I feel like you can do some blind jokes, especially if it's self-deprecating humor. Because if she's poking fun at herself, I don't know if that would really play in a negative way. Or as negative, I should say.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot to be optimistic about with Toph. I think her being 15 or like older than 12 is very exciting, because Like what? Where are they going to find like a 12-year-old to give us what Toph is in the show? You know, like at least there's potential here with her being older. I feel like, so I think that's exciting. So in terms of casting, I mean, we're trying to cast a teenage girl who's blind, who's Asian, right? With Toph. So
may or may not have previous martial arts
acting experience are a bonus, but we're pretty. I mean, look, that describes probably hundreds of thousands. I don't know, thousands, tens of thousands of people in the world. So it's not like there's no one out there. It's just this is a very narrow person to find. If they're casting someone who is blind if they keep the character blind, which they have to, and if they cast someone who's blind, which they also really should, like if they're going for authenticity, like they really should do that. So I don't know how we're gonna I don't know if we have like a guest cast list here, but it's probably a new actor, I would assume.
Yeah, I don't have any. I tried to look to see what the internet says, but I don't have anything on potential actors, and the person who probably does is sick? ?
Yeah, apparently, Ali. Yeah. So
I mean, unfortunately, you're talking a very specific set of parameters for.
Yes, very specific here, and it's okay. More on why should they cast a blind girl here? Well, look, we're casting Asian and Indigenous people to play Asian and Indigenous characters. First thing is it's a role for a blind actor. There's not that many roles for disabled people. It's also just bringing authenticity to the portrayal of a disabled person. I think that this is very important, and they really, really need to do this, actually cast a blind person here. But maybe more interestingly to talk about is this portrayal of disability in terms of how did Avatar do it? Is what Avatar did appropriate in 2024? And regardless of that, will the show go there in terms of the blind jokes? I think these are very interesting questions, best handled by disability advocates and experts, of course. Look, in terms of media, I will say it's not like there are a lot of shows out there that have disabled characters or people of other types constantly cracking jokes about something an aspect of them, you know? It is very weird compared to now what Avatar did with Toph, but also it felt very natural. I wonder if we criticized it at the time at all or questioned it. I can't remember. But it always felt pretty well handled the way they did it, and still I think doesn't. I mean, when we rewatch Avatar, it's not gonna feel so weird and offensive or anything. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, you go ahead.
Sorry. I think what made the jokes okay is because, again, it was self-deprecating humor, because they'd be flying on Appa and she's like, I see it. And everyone looks, and then she's like, you fell for it. Ah.
Yeah, it's her making fun of herself. Of course, it would have been better if we had disabled writers and stuff, which I'm not sure to what extent we had, and actors, and so obviously you can do better in that regard. But the way it's it's not other characters making fun of her and stuff. In general, I'm aware of discourse about best ways to portray disability. There's the notion that you don't want it to be inspiration porn or whatever. You don't want it to be it's about how this person's overcoming their struggle, isn't it so inspiring? They're overcoming. A lot of times a disability is just an innate part of someone, and it's not something to overcome. It's an aspect of who you are, I think, is a lot of the modern discourse on this, and that's kind of so it's interesting to look at Avatar through that lens. Did Toph have to overcome her blindness? I don't think the show is ever really showing that. I don't think they were ever really doing that about her.
Obviously none of us are the going to be, the people who know any of this in a definitive way. But as far as I know, it does seem the response has been positive to the way Toph was portrayed, and the fact that it was it was just a part of her, and it was a part of her earthbending, and not only was it just a part of her earthbending, but it gave her abilities in earthbending that other people didn't have, and I think that was to me, feels like a good thing. But again, I'm not blind or disabled, so my opinion on it isn't super relevant. But yeah, I mean, I think if we were to go back and look how it was in the original show, I don't think our opinions on it would change too much. But I don't know.
Yeah, so we're not going to spend too much time on it, but yeah, it is interesting. Like Toph learning metal bending, it's not like she overcame something, so that's good, really good. But maybe it is a little bit like she got special powers because she's different. Like that, right. You could argue that aspect is a little weird. So I think that's maybe the biggest direction that I'm interested to see people's opinions on nowadays. But I think that it's very important. Looking back, 2006, and they, for the most part, probably avoided a lot of like, oh, she's overcoming her disability, which is like the big thing that people get pissed about. And they didn't really do that even way back in this. That's pretty cool, I think, about Avatar. It's like Avatar pretty cool. They did a lot of stuff at least pretty well, like with people always talk about Avatar as like strong female characters, and of course that's a weird way of looking at it. But like, did have a lot of like very well developed, well characterized female characters, even in 2005, 2006, stuff like that. But will this show go there? More relevantly, will this show, which is afraid of offending people, which is afraid of challenging the audience, they allow Toph to make fun of herself? Will they even risk getting into potentially offensive territory with this character? I think this is a big worry. I agree. I am worried about them taking out.
I think they are more likely to take out a lot of that stuff than they are to, and maybe this is me being like mean to Netflix, but I think they're more likely to do that than they are to actually cast a blind actor. Like, I don't have a ton of confidence in them doing.
I think I agree with you, and that's really sad.
Yeah.
They really need to get, that's like, I gotta say, that's the number, if they're in casting right now, this is the number one thing, like more important than your specific stuff in the episodes. I mean, kind of to some extent, it's not really more important, but like, you gotta do this to start with. But blind jokes. I mean, first of all, jokes. The show doesn't make a lot of jokes. That's your first challenge. Second of all, this aspect of it not being super challenging. I don't know, Ben or Jeff, where, considering what this show typically, what we saw from season 1, how are you thinking how they'll handle these parts of Toph?
I can see them very easily going into the like, I don't know. Well, okay, I need to preface what I'm saying with like, not only am I not blind or not Asian, I'm also not a woman, so I can't really speak much. But I don't know. I feel like, yeah, they'll very easily go to more empowering messaging rather than any kind of self-deprecating.
It could become a very special episode type thing, or
yeah, which Toph would hate,
right.
Like that's like totally the opposite of her. I feel like they do have a handle on the characters. That would feel like such a huge misstep to go in that direction. It is valid to worry about, but that'd be like their biggest adaptation misstep, more so than anything in season 1. I know, Ben, where is your head at with how they're going to do Toph here?
I mean, I agree with you, Dylan, that for all the flaws of this first season, they did seem to have a decent grasp on the characters, as far as like their person. I don't think they're going to do Toph like completely wrong. I could see where they cut down on some of that self-deprecating humor, even though I think that is... I don't think people would have too much trouble with that. If another character was making fun of her, that'd be totally different. But when she's making the jokes about herself, I don't... That was just her in the show. Like, so... I mean, do I think it would be best if they did cast a blind actress? Yes, it's kind of like with what was it? It was like a Marvel live action show recently, Echo.
Yeah.
So it's great that they did that, you know, and I hope they're able to do it here. But on the other hand, like being realistic, you're talking about a very, like we said a minute ago, a very specific set of parameters for this character you're trying to cast. You're trying to cast someone, you know, a young Asian female between the ages of, let's say, 13 and 15. And we'll try to find someone who has, if not martial arts experience, but at least the capacity to, you know, learn martial arts. And oh yeah, it would be good if they're blind. I mean, that's a very, you know, I don't know how many people fit that bill completely. So
yeah, not many. I think they're out there. Look, we cast, you know, many indigenous actors, you know. So I think we've like, Gao and Dio seem perfect for Qatar, and that's a very specific character, you know.
I'm not saying it can't be done, but do you get what I'm saying? It's just I could see them having some difficulty, I guess.
Oh yeah. I mean, for sure, it's probably a very tough casting thing to go about. So I feel like base level for Toph is like this show's less humorous, so probably Toph will make fewer jokes, and so but maybe she'll make some and still provide some humor, similar to Sokka, maybe a few more jokes than Sokka. But, and still will be similarly maybe self-deprecating and have the same kind of attitude towards her blindness. But overall, maybe the show will focus on the more serious aspects of Toph. That's probably the base level, considering what the show did in season 1. Which is not the disaster that we're worried about, right? They preserve somewhat the aspects of Toph. They just do less humor. I will say, I feel like animated Toph is exactly what this show needs going into season 2. Like, we need her heart, her humor. Like, let's just do exactly that character. That is what we need here. But it would be a little bit incongruous with season 1. Would you guys be okay if what I described was the end result? Just like a more subdued, less jokey, but still a little bit jokey version of Toph?
I mean, that's probably the best outcome in terms of in terms of what's probable. So,
yeah, I think so.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
We'd take it. I do think there's material. There's like so much. It's not. I don't think like original Toph is so sacrosanct, and like I think that there's a version of this show which is like not trying to be this mass appeal show, which can can do something like, let's reevaluate Toph's disability through the lens of 2024 and bring in actual like disabled people and consultants to actually write this stuff, and like that would be could be a really interesting version of Toph that they show. Like, doesn't feel like what the show does, but I think that there's an adaptation or a modern version of Toph, I think could be really interesting. But yeah, I know, still like everyone's still very excited though, right? I don't know. How about this, getting into mapping out season 2? Will we keep her wrestling type introduction, you know? Feels very silly for the very serious Netflix Avatar.
Yes, but also, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jeff. I'll follow.
I agree it's silly, but also this show has shown a reticence to deviate too far from main story beats, so we're probably just going to do it.
I don't care how much money it takes. I need Dwayne Johnson as the Boulder.
That's what we speculated.
I forgot about that. That would be fun.
Make it happen.
That would make a lot of this worth it.
It would be worth it. Yeah, I mean, we could cast the actual wrestler who plays the Boulder, but we also, you know, we have the Asian people and Dwayne Johnson, actually Pacific Islander. It fits. They would not be able to pay for him, but maybe there's a world where him or a kid or something is the fan of Avatar, and he would do it. By the way, speaking of that, Serena Williams needs to make a cameo at some point.
Oh yeah,
I'd be down for that.
She should probably play her
a tennis
original
adjacent bending sport.
Pro bending.
Yeah, that's how it starts.
Oh my gosh! What if they baked in the origins of pro bending into Avatar?
That's
what we're all clamoring for.
All right, we figured it out.
Oh man,
to be fair, I think pro bending wouldn't be too bad live action if they ever got around to Korra.
No, I think that would be sick. Like,
It could be fun. It's just like, it's funny to think that this is like looking at the whole picture, like Mel said, Avatar, it's like pro bending. We need to seed that in earlier. That would be the decision they would make.
Yeah.
They should, I would be so down. Oh my God.
That's one I'd agree with. I'd be into that.
Why not do random stuff like that? Yeah, Serena Williams could play, obviously, her original character. Obviously, she's not Asian, I don't believe so. But come on, you can make an exception here for her to play original character in season 3. Let's try to map out season 2. I have feedback here from XEOCX13, gave us their versions of seasons 2 and 3. So I'm going to start here as a baseline, and let's see what we like and don't like. So here's what they say for book 2. Episode 1 is an adaptation of Avatar State and Return to Omashu as one episode. General Feng may be leading a rebellion on Omashu. I think that's an interesting call. Episode 2, Toph introduction. Maybe bitter work included and Katara Toph dynamics. Episode 3, Library and Desert. Appa goes missing. Episode 4, Serpent's Pass drill. 5, City of Walls and Secrets. 6, Lake Laogai. 7, Guru. 8, Crossroads of Destiny. I think this is a great starting point. You know, I think 4 episodes in Ba Sing Se. 2 of the other episodes are the two-parters in the middle of the season. This feels pretty right as a potential of what they might do here.
Yeah, because they even got the Library of the Desert in there as well.
It is pretty quick. Episode 3, Library Desert. That's episode 10, so that's already halfway. But so let's go through book 2.
But now, can they do the library? Even we already
even though we saw
watching. Yeah. Maybe we just seeded him in so that it would make his introduction more interesting later. It's like, oh, that's who that was. Maybe. Let's go through what they've done already, because they already took a lot of stuff from the beginning of book 2. I think basically in some form they've taken something from all the 5 original episodes. So the first 5 episodes I think they have done in some form. Episode 1, Avatar State. I think they did a lot of the introduction of the concept of the Avatar State already through Kyoshi and Kuruk, I guess, or maybe it was Roku, honestly. Some of the more forgettable parts of the season, maybe. But I guess Kyoshi was a good minor character, too, speaking of.
Oh, yeah, I guess how does Suki come back in this?
Oh, yeah, and Suki, by the way. We should have shouted out Suki as favorite minor characters. People like Suki. So in season 2 of Avatar, she comes back in the Serpent's Pass? Yeah.
Yeah.
So they could just bring her in there, but we could bring her in earlier. Anyway, Avatar State, we do the concept of the Avatar State. We also do Azula's introduction already. So those are pretty major parts. Even if we're not doing the literal plotline of that episode, I feel like we kind of did the main things already from there.
The only element we're missing on the Avatar State is I don't think Aang's been told yet, if you're killed in the Avatar State, you're gone.
Yes.
Avatar cycle's gone.
Which we don't find out until season 2 anyway.
Right.
So they should probably introduce that. Maybe they do it in the beginning. Mel argued earlier that the Koizilla, the Avatars No More, is starting to seed us into that kind of idea. So I think that's interesting if we continue from that. Episode 2, Cave Its Lovers. Obviously, we did everything with Cave Its Lovers already. We did not do the Zuko Iroh plotline here, so that is notable. Song. I forgot about Song. We did not see Song here. So we could do that. That's not like a vital Zuko Iroh plotline, but we're going to do something with them in the beginning of the season. Episode 3, Return to Omashu. This is probably the most obvious one to do, because we showed that Omashu is taken over by Fire Nation now, but we haven't done the rebellion. But one of the main parts of Return to Omashu is that we just see more of everything with Omashu, and we saw an extended version of Omashu, I would argue, in season 1. So I don't know if this is super necessary to go back here. I'm actually not sure if we will go back to Omashu to a significant extent. What are your guys' read on that?
Unclear, since they made that the lasting image at the end. But who knows, since there's supposed to be a time skip.
Yeah, that could be like a closing note on what we saw from Omashu in season 1, or a promise of more here coming up. Yeah, so we will see there. The swamp. So we haven't done most of the swamp, but we saw Princess Yue vision to Sokka in the spirit world instead of in the swamp. So you could argue that's adapting that in some form. But certainly we could do more of the swamp. But this feels like the type of episode we would cut out. But I don't know. The swamp benders are important. Kind of. Not really.
Not really.
Not really.
Debatable.
A lot of people who are part of the rebellion that, they're important in that regard. But
I could see a return to Omashu because of the Mechanist and Teo.
Yeah, we could do more with them.
And I mean with Boomy, because I think even if they don't adapt the swamp, I think we're going to get some version of the line like, you need to find an earthbending teacher who waits and listens.
That is pretty important, yeah. Yeah. So you're saying we'll seed in somehow before we get to Toph. We don't just jump to Toph right away. We have to do something like that.
I think so. Just something small like that would work. You don't necessarily need the swamp vision of, oh, there she is. I saw her before. That kind of.
Yeah. I think it's a good call. So we'll see on the swamp. Avatar Day. I argued we adapted Avatar Day in the second episode of the show. We didn't do Chin, but we did do Kyoshi inhabiting Aang. So I feel like we're good on Kyoshi Village.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is also a silly episode, so kind of hard to see them doing it to some extent. But maybe we want to see more of Kyoshi. And then we get into Blind Bandit, Zuko Alone, huge episode. So the one thing about the outline that we mentioned here is there's no Zuko Alone. I feel like the show will want to do Zuko Alone. But as we saw from The Storm, they kind of seeded that into a different episode. It's just like we took the flashbacks from that without the framing device of the episode. So maybe we just work in the flashbacks in a different way. I meing, Zuko's sick in Ba Sing Se, so that's a natural place to work in flashbacks, I guess. But we should do Zuko Alone. They really should. I don't know, The Chase, Bitter Work, those are episodes you don't have to do. It'd be nice, though. Bitter Work, we learn about redirecting lightning. We got to do that.
I did like The Chase.
It's good character stuff there, which means we probably won't do it. And then you probably an episode on The Library in the Desert, The Serpent's Pass, and The Drill. I feel like, so the biggest changes from that line that we mentioned, I would work in Zuko Alone. I would try to get in some of the character work from like The Chase and Bitter Work somewhere, but you can do that on the margins of these hour-long episodes, and then I don't know if we need to do a whole intro episode on Avatar State no Mashu. I'm tempted to just jump in the Toph here. Even if it's the second half of episode 1, maybe we do some introduction stuff in the first half. Why waste time before getting to Toph? That's what we want to see. I think we should go Toph right in episode 1.
Yeah, agreed.
Second half, sure.
Second half, yeah. Do first, catch us up on everything. Maybe seed in some looking for an earthbending teacher. Seed in maybe some more information on the Avatar State. Then let's go to introducing Toph. Maybe we finish it out in episode 2, and then we move on to some other learning earthbending character stuff. And then look, episode 3, library, bang. There we go. And we had more time for Zuko Alone. We had more time for other character work. I would be tempted to spend the whole season in Ba Sing Se, I will say, just because it's so good.
Well, one thing I question is I want... Okay, this is going to sound weird to say this. I want Appa to be kidnapped because of how strong, like, an emotional, like, journey that was for Aang. But I honestly wonder if they're going to cut it down somehow. Like, if they might wait till they get to Ba Sing Se before Appa goes missing.
Yeah. I could see them doing it differently. It'd be interesting. Maybe you focus in it on 1 or 2 episodes instead of kind of leaving it lingering like the show does.
I just think they need to pare it down a bit, like, because of the limited time they have.
Yeah, probably. It is very dramatic, though, so it feels like something the show would focus on. But it is a much needed kind of emotional content for Aang, expressive content for Aang. So Yeah. But look, the type of outline we're talking about with book 2 doesn't seem that bad. Seems a lot of good stuff they could do here, even if they stick pretty closely to the original season. So let's ask everyone anything in particular you'd be looking forward to. Any are you optimistic, I guess, from what we've been talking about in season 2, Jeff?
Yeah, it seems like there are a few ways they could put things together. Like they have enough episodes to make it work. So I think they can hit the main beats.
Nice. Mel?
Yeah, I mean, the season got better as we went along, so my hope is there's learnings, and we now have our footing, and they continue to improve.
Definitely. Ben?
Well, to follow up on what I was talking about a moment ago, if they get a few more episodes, like say they get 9, 10, I think you can stretch out some of the story beats, like Abba missing a bit more. But I really am looking forward to seeing Aang learn earthbending, like to have these training scenes.
Yeah, definitely show it. Don't show it off screen.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to seeing that. Looking forward to seeing Toph. If we're starting to do Katang, looking forward to that. I mean, we started already. And yeah, Ba Sing Se feels like the perfect material for this show. So I think there's a lot of hope for season 2 here.
I do want maybe them to take a moment to adapt like the Tale of Iroh, even if it is very brief.
I suspect they will. They took elements, they took the song into episode 4 this season, but they still could do the actual tale. Yeah.
Yeah, I know they did the song, but I really want to see them adapt the tale. So
I bet they do. I bet they find a way they work that in there. Cool. So and look, book 2 finale pretty wild. So that'll be fun to see how their attempt at that.
Jeff? I don't know. Azula didn't come across as super sinister, I think, as you mentioned. So yeah, I'm hoping for good things from the season 2 finale. I don't know how it'll work out.
And May and Ty Lee actually doing things this season.
So that would be nice too.
Look forward to that. They were another low light of the season, unfortunately, but they were there. That's fine. Okay, any last season 2 thoughts before we do feedback quickly and wrap up? Looking forward to it in 2026. No, 2025, I guess, right? If they film now. But I don't know, actually, though, it might be 2026.
I wonder if they're going to do 2 and 3 back to back now that they have both.
Yeah, so they will. There's at least a line that they'll film them in quick succession. So in theory, they will have filmed everything before book 2 airs. Yeah. So it might be something like we don't get anything until late 2025 or early 2026, but then it's like the book 2 and then book 3 only like 8 months after or something. You could see something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which fine. I mean, it'll be a long wait, but I will have Avatar, maybe have Avatar Studios content by then. That's another story. Okay, we mentioned the feedback from XCOCX. Let's, Chaitanya wrote us an email about, show fails to demonstrate how crazy Zuko's banishment was. Ozai sent him to find the Avatar. Avatar's missing 100 years. Avatar cycle was broken. It was a death sentence. This version had them talk about compassion as a weakness, just felt very off. Why would then Azula be jealous of Ozai's love for Zuko at all? She basically had no competition. I think that's fair. I agree. I think playing up the Azula playing up the family drama stuff is weird considering how brutal Zuko's situation is. Yeah. The show tries to do different things, but keep the same framework, and it can be awkward. I think that's maybe the takeaway there. Maybe bends the framework a little bit more. I don't know. And then Weston says, please do a recap podcast for the original Avatar and Korra. Any combination of hosts would be awesome. You all are very fun to listen to, and live action coverage. I'm a fan of all your other overly animated coverage for a couple years. Plus, I think a lot of people want to do a big rewatch before the 2025 Gang film releases, and you guys will be the perfect companion pod to all the diehard veteran fans and newbie Netflix converts alike. Look forward to hearing more, and keep doing a great job, Dylan, and everyone else involved in the production. Smiley. Thank you, Weston. Look, that's a great selling point for the idea of the rewatch, right? Like, it's a build up to the Avatar Studios film and Avatar Studios stuff. Look, let us know if you guys want to do this, okay? I'm on the fence. This is a big commitment still. Look, we gotta wrangle the co-hosts, get them on the recordings. We gotta do weekly I mean, it's a lot. So if you guys want this to happen, please let us know. Please leave a comment, leave an iTunes review. Send us an email. You can appeal to me directly, podcast@overlyanimated.com. I will say that probably would not start until the summer if we're going to do something there. It's going to be, it's tempting to try to group episodes up, not do every episode. I don't know. We can have these discussions. We could
even just binge a season at a time and then just do 3 episodes.
Yes, that would be the very short version of it for sure. Yeah. I want to do the fandom memories, and are you guys interested? We mentioned we have secrets from the fandoms of Avatar and Korra.
I'm still I mean, I don't know if this is too secret, but still Facebook friends with somebody of.
That is one of the big secrets. I don't think Mel. I think you're the only one of the ones to know that secret. So.
Yeah, I figured it out, and for some reason. They said yes to my friend request. So
I think I know the secret.
Interesting. I don't. This is one that not even all of the From the Spirit World people know. So I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about. I mean, I can do what I want, but I don't know if we could. If we should.
I can talk about it
that.
on the Discord, but unless you don't want me to.
We should not talk about it publicly. Probably. Okay.
I meant the Suki Squad Discord.
Oh, and our Suki. Yeah. Those are the new group chat called Suki Squad. I don't know if I agree with giving Suki that's why I was we didn't mention Suki until 90 minutes in. Some people really like Suki amongst us. They're probably just not here, I guess.
Quick thoughts. She was awesome, but want to see her more.
Yeah, she'll be in book 2. We'll more to talk about. We need to ask Jake Mel about this. I feel like we need.
Yeah, I'm happy to keep my mouth shut. That's one secret I've carried with me for
I know, right?
decades.
It's the original secret.
Yeah,
I was accidentally clued in.
Okay, so Jeff does know. Interesting. We're talking about who the contact was. If you were in the Avatar fandom, you know what we're talking about. So look, do you guys want us to talk about stuff like that? I will say it would be. We weren't together during book 1 of Avatar, so it would take a little bit to build up to that sort of stuff, and most of it's from Korra times, but there's some stuff for sure from book 3 of Avatar. But yeah, we'll continue to discuss this, and let us know if you would like to see it. And I'm also have preference to do it on video, which is even harder, just because it'd be nice to get YouTube stuff going for that, because we usually just post the audio of them. It's tough for audio only to do well on YouTube. So all these are being considered. Anyway, so yes, that potentially coming up in the future. Before then, we might do an Avatar Studios speculation type podcast again. Probably that would be the next step. So we'll talk about that after. But any last thoughts from anyone here before we close out?
Hoorah.
Hoorah. Okay.
I think
talk about what we're ending.
A rewatch would be fun because I'm actually watching Korra again for the first time since the finale aired.
Wow. Yep. Yeah, I don't think I've watched since the finale, so that would be very exciting.
My opinions have shifted.
Oh. Hopefully not for worse.
No, generally positive. I mean, I'm just started book 3 and
Ben's I loved book 2 of Korra now. I loved it.
Honestly, while I do consider it my least favorite of the seasons between Avatar and Korra, it had more high points than I remembered.
Yeah, there really is some good stuff in there. Yeah, just not necessarily early on, but yeah, there is good stuff. So it'd be fun to go through all that again. Yes. Anyway, let us know all about that. You can, if the best way to support us to demonstrate your support, the overly animated Patreon, which encompasses now this stuff as well. So support us via Patreon at patreon.com/overly animated. Thanks to our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Steve, and thanks to our patron executive producers, Steve, Michael, and Phoenician. Also, check out other overly animated podcasts at overlyanimated.com. We just did a Ladybug podcast. I don't know how much crossover fandom there is, but that's a fun show too. And potential other From the Spirit World stuff coming up. So make sure you guys are subscribed. From the Spirit World, Overly Animated, any of these feeds. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you next. Wait, what are we ending on? Should we just do a bye or do we want to end on something? Unless anyone has a good one.
Could say Bison.
Bison, rock on. Are these the suggestions?
These are the suggestions. What did you say? Celebrate.
How about Night Lovers?
Night Lovers, yeah, I'm into that.
From the, I don't know if Ben missed the poem. Were you there for that?
Yeah, I was here for the poem. Night Lovers.
Okay, let's go. Thanks, guys, for listening. 1, 2, 3. Night Lovers.
Night Lovers.
Night Lovers.